What is gun fit? Gun fit boils down to one thing. No two people are alike. No two people are alike. So why do you need a fitted gun? You need a gun that fits you because your physique is unique, your body type is unique, the way you hold the gun, the way you stand. Even though as human beings we're all very similar, and what we're trying to do with a properly fitted gun is have your gun shoot where you look, and your instincts will tell you that you've made the right sight picture when to shoot a game bird or hit a clay target in flight when you pull the trigger. A Trygun is a fully articulated live fire shotgun that we use to do gun fittings. Gun fittings have been done with Tryguns since the late 1800s, and they allow a gun fitter to make changes to the relative measurements of the gun to move the shooter's dominant eye to the center line to make the gun shoot where they look. Really what it boils down to is the rear side of the shotgun is the contact point or anchor point of the buttstock, the comb of the buttstock along the cheekbone ledge. That's the rear side of the shotgun. So when we move the dimensions of the gun, we're in effect changing the rear sight alignment of the gun. Because the shotgun being meant to be pointed and not aimed, what we're trying to do is give your dominant eye perfect position when we change the dimensions of the Trygun. Most shooters have heard the term length of pull, and the length of pull is a measurement, very simply done, from the front trigger on a double trigger gun or the center of a single trigger on a single trigger gun to the back or center of the sole of the buttstock. This gun has a recoil pad on it. We like to measure length of pull right to the center. The Trygun is currently set right at about 16-inch length of pull, which means probably the last man I fitted on it was fairly tall. What's the relevance of length of pull? Length of pull sets the stage for the rest of the measurements. I mentioned in an earlier segment that gun fit boils down to two words, anchor point. And there are two anchor points. The key anchor point is the one to your cheekbone, but the second anchor point is where the gun stops and solidifies in your shoulder pocket. When you have a gun that fits you well for both drop-it face, cast-it face, and length of pull, when you bring it proper to your cheekbone, it pretty much locks into the shoulder pocket at that very instant of time. When you watch good shooters, they seem to move their gun very little. One of the reasons that they seem to move very little is that because their guns fit them very well, and they have to move them very little to bring them to their complete anchor points, both at their cheekbone and at their shoulder pocket. When gun fitters communicate stock dimensions to stock makers, they use a tool called a drop gauge, which I'm affixing to the top of my Trygun at the moment. And along the top, we've got a ruler that allows us to measure the key points that are relative to stock making. The highest point of the comb is called drop-it comb. As we move the ruler down, you see it slides to the lowest part of the comb, which is called drop-it heel. What a Tricon allows you to do is move all the relative stock dimensions to ultimately allow the shooter's eye to be perfectly positioned over the center line or the rib of the gun. The knuckle that allows these measurements to be moved is up in the front of the wrist, and if we watch carefully, we can see that by moving this screw, it's allowing the stock to go, up or down, and that would be raising the drop-it face or lowering the drop-it face, which is in turn lowering the drop-it heel and the drop-it comb. The side adjustment screw allows us to move the stock left or right, which in turn is changing the cast of the gun. Right-handed shooters typically respond to cast off. Left-handed shooters typically respond to cast on. So if you hear of a gun that's got cast on, it was probably made for a left-handed shooter. Most right-handed shooters are going to be more comfortable and get more value out of shooting a gun that's cast off. When the length of pull is correct, the drop-it face and casted face is what gives you perfect alignment and makes your gun shoot where you look. The pitch is the angle that the buttstock is cut in reference to replicating the perfect angle of your shoulder pocket. When a gun is properly fitted to you with the correct pitch, your gun is very comfortable for you to shoot because 100% of the energy of the recoil phase is coming through 100% of the recoil pad into 100% of your shoulder pocket. When shooters have the wrong pitch, the recoil is accentuated into one or two of the areas of the recoil pad, either the toe or the heel, and that's why some people complain about certain guns kicking more than others. More often than not, it's not that the gun doesn't kick anymore, it's how you perceive recoil. Pitch can be communicated between a gun fitter and a stock maker in two basic ways. One is by measuring the degrees that this angle is being cut, and currently this Trygun is set at 4 degrees of down pitch. Or you can also have a mathematical equation to convert that to inches down, and 4 degrees also equals 2 inches of down pitch. Well, where would that down pitch be measured? If this right angle was squared up against the top of the receiver, assuming these would be a 90-degree angle, we would measure how many inches away the rib is from the straight edge that's projecting away from the top of the standing breech. And